I am Julian, and I am 32 years old. Just last month, my own flesh and blood brother stole the custom 3-carat diamond engagement ring I bought for the woman I love, just so he could use it to propose to his own girlfriend. While I was standing there in the backyard, staring at the empty velvet box in my shaking hands, trying to comprehend the sheer audacity of the theft, my parents actually looked me dead in the eye and defended him. My mother told me that my brother just got engaged, and this should be a happy moment. They defended a literal thief right in front of our entire family, laughing the whole thing off like I was overreacting over a borrowed sweater or a misplaced pair of shoes. They told me I made a good salary and could easily afford another one. But there was one major detail they did not know. They had no idea that the high-end jeweler I purchased the ring from does not mess around with proprietary serial numbers, high-definition security footage, or grand larceny. And right now, the very same people who laughed in my face are begging me to drop a massive lawsuit that is absolutely going to ruin their precious golden boy's life. Before I tell you exactly how I dismantled my family's toxic dynamic piece by piece, hit that like button if you believe that sharing DNA does not excuse toxic behavior and true justice always finds a way to balance the scales. And please, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Reading your locations helps me realize I am not alone in experiencing this kind of insanity. Now, let's go back to the exact morning my entire reality shattered into a million pieces. The deep blue velvet box felt incredibly wrong in my hands the absolute second my fingers closed around it. It was too light. The weight of it was entirely off. It was completely hollow. I was standing inside the closet of my childhood bedroom. This room was supposed to be nothing more than a temporary stop for me and my girlfriend, Clara. We were in the messy, incredibly stressful middle of a complex real estate transaction, waiting to close on our very first house. Our apartment lease had ended, and my parents had graciously offered to let me stay with them for 3 weeks, while Clara stayed with her sister to save us from paying exorbitant short-term rental fees. I thought it was a genuinely generous gesture. I thought we had finally, after 3 decades of dysfunction, reached a place of mutual respect and adult boundaries. I was so incredibly wrong. I had kept the ring highly secured inside a heavy-duty digital safe that I personally bolted to the floorboards in the back corner of that closet. I only ever took it out when the house was completely empty just to check on it, to make sure it was still as pristine and perfect as the day I walked out of the jewelry store. It was a breathtaking 3-carat princess-cut diamond, set in a custom-designed platinum band that I had spent the better part of 2 years aggressively saving for. I had just taken a long shower. The warm steam was still clinging to the bathroom mirror, and my mind was racing with elaborate plans of exactly how I was going to pop the question to Clara during our upcoming weekend trip to the coast. I walked into the closet, punched in my secure PIN code, opened the heavy steel door of the safe, reached for the dark blue velvet box, and my heart physically stopped beating. I popped the hinge. Empty. There was nothing inside except the small, agonizing indentation in the velvet cushion where the ultimate symbol of my future was supposed to be nestled securely. Panic is a very strange, very paralyzing emotion. It does not always make you scream or thrash around. Sometimes it just drops the temperature in your veins to freezing and narrows your vision to a pinpoint. I tore my room apart with a frantic, terrifying silence. I stripped the heavy blankets and sheets off the bed, tossing them across the room. I emptied every single drawer of the dresser, dumping folded clothes onto the carpet. I checked the pockets of every jacket, coat, and pair of pants I owned. Even though my logical brain knew with absolute certainty I had never once taken that box out of that specific room. "Mom!" I called out, my voice cracking in a harsh way it had not done since I was a teenager. I rushed down the carpeted stairs, taking them 2 and 3 at a time, nearly tripping over my own feet. "Mom, have you seen the blue box from my safe? Did you move it?" My mother, Margaret, was sitting at the massive granite kitchen island. She was the absolute picture of suburban tranquility, her perfectly manicured fingernails wrapped loosely around her favorite ceramic coffee mug. The morning news was playing softly on the television in the background. She did not even flinch when I burst into the room. She just looked up from her tablet, her expression utterly blank and completely unbothered. What do you mean, honey? She said, taking a slow, agonizingly deliberate sip of her coffee. Isn't it upstairs in your room? You probably just misplaced it somewhere. You have been so stressed with work and the new real estate closing. Your mind is just cluttered. I thrust the empty velvet box toward her across the island. My hands were shaking so violently the spring-loaded hinge snapped shut with a loud crack. The box is empty, Mom. I always put it in the safe. Always. I never leave it out. Someone took it. She finally directed her gaze to the box, but her eyes held zero surprise. There was no shock, no maternal concern for my panic. Well, do not be dramatic, Julian. Nobody broke into this house. We live in a gated community. Go upstairs, calm down, and look again. It will turn up. That is exactly when I heard it. The distinct, booming, obnoxiously loud sound of my younger brother Preston's laughter floating in through the open glass doors from the backyard patio. My stomach plummeted straight into my shoes. I moved past my mother, practically tearing the sliding screen door off its tracks as I stormed outside into the bright morning sunlight. There he was, Preston, 26 years old, the undisputed golden child of the family who had never worked a genuinely hard day in his entire life, sitting casually on the expensive patio furniture. Next to him was his girlfriend of 8 months, Hazel. And there, catching the morning sunlight, flashing with a brilliant, blinding fire that made me want to physically throw up, was my ring. It was sitting right there on Hazel's left hand. She was holding it up to the light, admiring it from different angles, and using her phone to take a picture of it. Preston, I demanded, my voice dropping a full octave, echoing harshly across the manicured lawn. What the hell are you doing with my ring? Hazel jumped in her seat, nearly dropping her phone onto the paving stones. Preston just casually turned around, and I saw that same, infuriatingly sweet, innocent smile he had weaponized to get away with absolute murder since we were little kids. Oh, hey bro, he said smoothly, standing up and sliding his hands into the pockets of his expensive designer shorts. Isn't it absolutely amazing? I proposed to Hazel last night after dinner. She said yes. The entire world tilted sideways. I felt a high-pitched ringing in my ears. I stepped off the porch and walked directly toward him. That is my ring. That is the ring I bought for Clara. Take it off her hand right now. Hazel looked frantically between the two of us, all the color draining from her face. Preston? What is he talking about? Whose ring is this? Do not be ridiculous, Julian, Preston laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched sound, and his eyes darted quickly toward the kitchen door behind me. I bought this myself. I picked it out weeks ago. You are scaring Hazel. You are a liar and a thief. I stepped forward, closing the physical distance between us until we were chest to chest. That is a custom 3-carat princess cut diamond. I spent months working overtime for that. Take it off, Hazel. Now. What is all this shouting about out here? My father, Richard, suddenly appeared at the door. My mother was right behind him, wiping her hands calmly on a linen dish towel. I spun around to face them, pointing a shaking finger at Preston. Dad, Preston stole my engagement ring. He broke into my safe, took the ring I bought for Clara, and he is out here trying to pass it off as his own. Tell him to give it back right this second. Preston's lower lip actually trembled. He was 26 years old, and he was actively using a manipulation tactic he had perfected when he was in kindergarten. Dad, why would I steal his ring? I bought this for Hazel. I wanted her to have the absolute best. My mother stepped down off the patio, walking right past me as if I were invisible, to place a comforting, protective hand on Preston's shoulder. Julian, please lower your voice. Your brother just got engaged. This should be a happy, celebratory moment for our family. Why do you always have to find a way to ruin his big moments? I jerked back as if she had physically struck me across the face. Are you serious right now? That is my property. It is stolen property. He committed a crime. My father squinted through his glasses at Hazel's hand. It looks a little different than the pictures you showed me on your phone, Julian. The setting is quite big for Clara's hands anyway. Maybe you are just confused. He had the setting altered. Or he just jammed it onto her finger. I was shouting now, not caring for a single second what the wealthy neighbors thought. Call the jeweler. Call the police. That is my ring. My mother's voice immediately took on that sharp, patronizing tone that had haunted my entire existence. You are making a massive scene over nothing, Julian. Preston and Hazel are in love. They are starting a beautiful life together. He does not have your executive salary. He cannot afford things like this. Can't you just be the bigger person for once in your life and be happy for your brother? We will buy you a new one. A better one. I looked between the three of them. My mother's dismissive, enabling expression. My father's uncomfortable avoidance, staring intently at his expensive leather loafers instead of looking his eldest son in the eye. And Preston's triumphant, sickening smirk, poorly disguised as innocent, victimized confusion. I realized in that exact moment that I was utterly and completely alone in this family. I always had been. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. You know what? Fine. I will call the police right now and let them sort out the receipt matching the stone. Stop it! Preston lunged forward, his facade breaking, but I stepped back quickly out of his reach. Okay, fine. I borrowed it, but I was going to propose last night, and my credit cards are entirely maxed out, and we could not afford anything nice. You have absolutely everything, Julian. You have the perfect job, the perfect life, the perfect new house. You can easily buy another one. Preston, honey. Shoo. My mother hissed, pulling him back by his shirt, but the truth was out. He admitted it out loud in front of witnesses. I looked at my parents, waiting for the reprimand, waiting for the shock, waiting for them to finally, just once in their lives, hold their precious baby boy accountable for his destructive actions. Instead, my father let out a deep, heavy sigh. We will sort this out internally as a family. There is absolutely no need to involve the authorities or make this a public scandal. Preston made a mistake, but his intentions were pure. Love makes people do crazy things. Pure intentions. I laughed, a harsh, scraping sound that violently tore at my throat. He stole a $20,000 piece of jewelry, and they called it pure intentions. Something deep inside my chest hardened permanently. A lifetime of being the reasonable one, the responsible one, the one who always compromised and sacrificed for the sake of keeping the peace, crystallized into pure, unadulterated resolve. You are right, I said quietly, the dead calmness of my own voice scaring me more than my shouting did. We can fix this, and I will. I turned and walked back into the house, their voices calling after me fading into the background. I was not running away. I was going to war, and they had absolutely no idea what kind of legal and emotional firepower I was about to bring down on their heads. To fully understand the magnitude of this betrayal, you have to understand the deeply toxic dynamic of the house I grew up in. From the exact moment Preston was born, the sun rose and set on his existence. I was 6 years older, which meant in my parents' skewed eyes, I was basically a fully functioning adult who needed to yield to the baby at all times. If I had a toy he wanted, I had to share it immediately or face punishment. If I earned money by spending my weekends mowing the neighbors' lawns and he wanted to buy a new video game console, I was heavily pressured to be a good big brother and pitch in to make him happy. It never stopped. The financial abuse only escalated as we got older. When it was time for me to go to college, my parents sat me down at the kitchen table with somber faces and explained that the economy was tough. The college fund they had supposedly started for me when I was born was entirely gone. They did not explicitly say it out loud, but I knew exactly where that money went. It had gone toward bailing Preston out of a juvenile vandalism charge when he destroyed a neighborhood clubhouse, and paying for his expensive private behavioral tutoring because he completely refused to pay attention or behave in regular high school classes. I did not complain. I accepted my fate. I took out massive, suffocating student loans. I worked grueling night shifts at a logistics warehouse, stacking heavy boxes until my back ached, all while taking 18 credits a semester just to graduate on time. I scraped and clawed my way to a business degree with zero help. Meanwhile, when Preston graduated high school barely scraping by with a D average, my parents magically found the hidden funds to buy him a brand new sports car as a motivational gift to encourage him for community college. A community college he promptly dropped out of 3 semesters later because it was too stressful. Aunt Beatrice, my mother's older sister, was the absolute worst instigator of this behavior. She was a wealthy widow who always treated Preston like a fragile, misunderstood prince. At every single family gathering, especially our Thanksgiving dinners, she would sit at the head of the table and loudly praise Preston for just managing to show up on time and wearing a clean shirt. In the very next breath, she would casually ask me when I was going to get a real promotion, instead of just grinding away at a mid-level management job, completely ignoring the fact that I was paying my own rent and building a solid career. She poisoned my mother's mind constantly, always whispering in the kitchen that Preston needed more help, more financial support, more padding from reality because the world was just so incredibly hard on sensitive souls like him. When our grandparents passed away, the small inheritance they left behind was quietly funneled entirely to Preston to help him get on his feet, while I was told I was already successful enough to not need it. I learned very early on that if I wanted a decent salary, a stable life, a secure future, I had to build it entirely on my own 2 feet. I distanced myself emotionally. I focused relentlessly on my career. I worked 80-hour weeks to climb the corporate ladder, sacrificing my weekends and holidays, eventually securing a high-paying executive role in a major logistics firm. And then I met Clara. Clara was absolutely everything my family was not. She was brutally honest, fiercely independent, and she saw me for exactly who I was as a person, not what financial utility I could provide for her. She did not expect handouts. She worked hard for her own money. We built a beautiful, quiet life together, entirely separate from the chaotic, draining vortex of my parents and my brother. When I decided it was time to propose, I wanted it to be flawless. I did not want to just walk into a mall and buy something off a generic display counter. I wanted a ring that represented the absolute singular nature of my love for her, a testament to what we had built together. That is why I went to Crystal Jewelers, a highly exclusive, appointment-only boutique located in the downtown financial district. Mr. Winston, the master jeweler and owner there, spent 3 uninterrupted hours with me on my first visit. We looked at dozens of loose stones under intense magnification before I finally found the one. A brilliant, fiery 3-carat princess cut diamond with absolutely flawless clarity. I clearly remember sitting in his plush leather office, sipping sparkling water, and signing the heavy stack of paperwork. The ring cost a small fortune. It was the culmination of years of performance bonuses, aggressive savings, and skipped vacations. "You are making a truly magnificent choice, Julian," Mr. Winston had told me, handing me the thick, embossed envelope containing the appraisal documents. "This is not just a piece of jewelry. It is an investment piece. And for your absolute security, you should know this specific stone has a unique, microscopic serial number laser inscribed directly on the girdle. It is officially registered in our international database under your legal name. If this ring is ever lost, stolen, or brought in for unauthorized modification anywhere in the country, it will flag immediately on the system." I had thanked him sincerely, taking the velvet box with hands that were actually shaking with anticipation and excitement. Because Clara and I were in the complex process of finalizing the purchase of our new home, we had briefly moved out of our apartment to avoid signing a new year-long lease. Clara stayed comfortably with her sister, and I made the fatal, idiotic mistake of accepting my parents' offer to stay in my old bedroom for a few weeks. I thought my property was safe. I bought a heavy-duty digital safe from a hardware store, bolted it directly to the floor of my closet with heavy lag screws, and locked the ring inside, waiting for the perfect weekend getaway to propose. I never in a million years imagined the thieves would be sleeping right down the hallway under the exact same roof. After the explosive confrontation on the patio, I did not say another word to my family. I went straight back up to my bedroom, threw all my clothes haphazardly into 2 large suitcases, grabbed my laptop, and packed my bathroom supplies. The entire time I was packing, My phone was aggressively vibrating on the nightstand. My mother texted me repeatedly, "Julian, please do not overreact and run away. We can go to the bank first thing on Monday morning. Your father will write you a check for whatever exact amount you paid for it. Let Preston have his special moment. Do not tear this family apart over a piece of metal. You are being unreasonable. Piece of metal." That is exactly what she called the symbol of my commitment to my future wife. I dragged my heavy suitcases down the carpeted stairs, the wheels bumping loudly against each step. My father was standing in the front hallway, blocking the door. He was looking incredibly old and incredibly weak, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "Julian, son, please." He reached out a trembling hand toward my arm. "Where are you going? We can sit down and talk about this like adults." "There is absolutely nothing to talk about, Dad," I said, my voice eerily calm, betraying none of the rage boiling inside me. "Your youngest son committed grand larceny, and you are actively harboring him. If I do not have that exact ring back in my hands by tomorrow morning, I am calling the police. I am not bluffing. Get out of my way." I walked out the front door, threw my bags into the trunk of my car, and drove straight to my best friend Harrison's place. Harrison had known me since our freshman year of college. He knew the whole sordid, exhausting history of my family dynamics. When I sat down heavily on his living room couch and told him exactly what had just happened, he nearly threw his coffee mug directly through the drywall. "Are you absolutely kidding me right now?" Harrison yelled, pacing the length of the living room, his hands running through his hair. "He stole a 20 grand ring from a bolted safe, and your parents want to quietly cut you a check to shut you up? Julian, you have to press charges. This is insane. This is actual criminal behavior." "I know." I rubbed my temples, a massive, pounding headache building aggressively behind my eyes. "But I just want the ring back, Harrison. I do not want their dirty money. I want the ring I specifically picked out for Clara." I called Clara that evening. It was easily the hardest, most humiliating phone call I have ever had to make in my entire life. I had to confess that the beautiful surprise I was meticulously planning was ruined, and that my own family had betrayed us both in the worst way possible. Clara, true to her incredible nature, did not care about the diamond or the money. She only cared about me and my mental state. She drove over to Harrison's place immediately. Holding her while she cried in frustration for what I constantly had to endure solidified my ultimate resolve. I was officially done being the sacrificial lamb for Preston's inflated ego. That night, lying wide awake in the dark on Harrison's guest bed, staring at the ceiling fan, a sickening, horrifying realization hit me like a freight train. I sat bolt upright in the dark, the puzzle pieces rapidly clicking together in my mind. Preston is lazy. Preston is not a criminal mastermind. He does not know how to crack a complex digital safe, and he certainly would not have the patience or the tools to try to pry it open without leaving massive damage. There was only one other person on the face of the earth who had the master override code to that specific safe. I had given it to my mother the day I moved it in. It was a foolish, naive gesture of trust, telling her to keep the code just in case of an absolute emergency where I was incapacitated or could not be reached. Preston did not break into the safe. My mother opened it for him. She literally aided and abetted a felony crime against her own eldest son to facilitate a fake, unearned fairy tale for her favorite child. The betrayal was so profoundly deep it felt like I was attending a funeral for a family that was still actively breathing. I realized then that I was not just dealing with a spoiled, entitled brother. I was dealing with a systemic, deeply ingrained family disease. And the only cure for this disease was absolute, ruthless, undeniable consequences. The next morning, I woke up with a singular, icy cold focus. I did not care about keeping the peace anymore. I did not care about saving face at future Thanksgiving dinners. I did not care about family harmony. I only cared about pure, unadulterated justice. I was sitting quietly in Harrison's kitchen, drinking a cup of black coffee and staring intently at the contact list on my phone, debating which corporate lawyer friend to call first, when an unknown local number flashed brightly on the screen. I answered it immediately. "Hello, is this Mr. Julian?" A refined, highly professional voice asked on the other end. "Speaking. Who is this?" "Mr. Julian. This is Mr. Winston calling from Crystal Jewelers. I sincerely hope I am not disturbing your morning, but we have a rather urgent situation regarding the 3-carat princess cut ring you purchased from our establishment last month." My heart instantly hammered violently against my ribs. "I am listening very closely, Mr. Winston." "A young man and a young woman came into our boutique right as we opened our doors this morning," Mr. Winston explained, his tone carefully neutral, but carrying a very heavy undercurrent of professional suspicion. The young man introduced himself as Preston. He presented the ring to my staff and requested an emergency, expedited resizing. He claimed he bought the ring from a private estate dealer in another state and needed it sized down 2 full sizes for his new fiancée. I gripped the edge of the granite kitchen counter so hard my knuckles turned stark white. "And what did you do?" "As per our strict, non-negotiable store policy with high-value items, especially those brought in without our original documentation or receipts, our master jeweler placed the stone under the magnification loupe to verify its integrity before applying any heat to the metal. He immediately located our proprietary laser inscription. When we ran that serial number through our international database, your client profile flagged immediately as the sole legal owner." "He stole it," I said flatly, stating the fact into the universe. The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but I needed to say them out loud to an outside party to make it completely real. "That young man is my younger brother. He stole the ring from my personal, locked safe yesterday morning." There was a long, heavy pause on the other end of the line. The silence was thick with the weight of the admitted crime. "I see," Mr. Winston finally said, his voice dropping an octave, completely losing the retail politeness and shifting into serious, protective business mode. "I must inform you, Mr. Julian, that they are currently waiting in our front VIP lounge. We told them the resizing process would take approximately an hour and offered them complimentary champagne to keep them comfortably on the premises. Given that this is registered in our system as your legal property, and you are officially confirming it was stolen, how exactly would you like us to proceed? I can have my security detail lock down the front doors right now and contact the local authorities immediately." A fierce, incredibly dark satisfaction flared intensely in my chest. I could end the entire charade right now. I could let the police walk right into that fancy boutique, slap heavy metal cuffs on Preston in front of his brand new fiancée, and let the chips fall exactly where they may. But I stopped and thought about my mother. I thought about my father standing weakly in the hallway, offering to write a hush-money check to sweep my pain under the rug. I did not just want Preston to face the law. That was too easy. I wanted my parents to be forced to watch their carefully constructed house of cards collapse in real time. I wanted them to choke on the harsh reality of the monster they had successfully created. "Mr. Winston," I said, my voice completely steady, "do not call the police just yet. Stall them. Tell them the ring requires a highly specialized laser technique that will take a few more hours to complete without damaging the setting. Tell them to leave and come back at exactly 3 p.m. to pick it up." "Are you absolutely certain, sir? We have possession of the ring safely secured in the back vault. We legally do not have to release it back to him." "Keep the ring locked in the vault," I confirmed. "But tell him it will be perfectly ready at 3 p.m. I am going to handle this situation personally. And Mr. Winston, I would deeply appreciate it if you could have your security footage from the day I bought the ring queued up and ready to play on a screen." "Understood perfectly, Mr. Julian. We will aggressively secure your property and expect your arrival at 3 p.m. I hung up the phone and looked up at Harrison, who was staring at me with incredibly wide eyes from across the kitchen island. "What happened? Who was that?" Harrison asked, leaning forward. "They took it to the jeweler to get it resized. The jeweler recognized the serial number on the diamond." I let out a heavy breath that was half laugh, half sigh of massive relief. "They have the ring locked in the vault." Harrison pumped his fist aggressively in the air. "Yes, call the cops right now, Julian. Nail him to the wall. Oh, I am absolutely going to nail him, I said, pulling up my contact list again. But first, I need to make sure the entire audience is in attendance for the show. I scrolled down and tapped the name of a ruthless corporate lawyer I had worked closely with on a very messy contract dispute a few years ago. I needed bulletproof legal advice on grand larceny, property reclamation, and exactly how much leverage I held before I walked into that jewelry store. I spent the next entire hour on the phone, pacing the floor and taking meticulous, detailed notes on a yellow legal pad. The lawyer confirmed exactly what I suspected. Because the ring was valued well over the felony threshold, it was a severe crime. If I filed an official police report, the state prosecutor could pick up the charges even if I later decided to drop them. Preston was recklessly playing with fire, and he was completely covered in gasoline. Around noon, my phone vibrated loudly on the table. A text message from my cousin Felix popped up. "Hey Julian. Heard things got completely crazy at the house yesterday. Aunt Beatrice is losing her mind over the drama. Just calling to check on you, man. Call me back when you can?" I rolled my eyes in disgust. Felix was my mother's absolute favorite nephew. He was the designated family gossip, the loyal spy who always reported back to the mothership with information. If Felix was reaching out to me now, it meant my parents were getting incredibly desperate for intel on my next move and were using him to fish for details. I decided to use him right back. I hit call. "Julian, man, I am so sorry about all the drama," Felix said immediately, his voice dripping with thick, fake empathy. "Listen, your mom is an absolute wreck today. She is crying nonstop in the living room. Preston feels terrible about the argument. He said he just panicked because he wanted to give Hazel a dream proposal and felt inadequate." "He did not panic, Felix. He premeditated a felony theft," I said coldly, cutting through his excuses. "Come on, man. Do not use harsh words like that." Felix backpedaled quickly, sounding nervous. "It is family. You know exactly how Preston is. He does not think things through. Uncle Richard is more than willing to give you the cash today. Why don't you just take the money, buy Clara an even bigger ring, and let this whole thing go? If you ruin Preston's engagement, you are going to tear the family apart permanently. Is a piece of jewelry really worth a family divorce?" "A family divorce?" I repeated the phrase, the words tasting sour on my tongue. "You actually think I am the one initiating the divorce? My mother gave him the private override code to my safe." "Felix, do not play dumb with me. I know you know." Silence on the other end. I had guessed right. The whole inner circle knew exactly how Preston got his hands on the ring. "Look," I continued, deliberately adopting a weary, defeated tone. I needed him to strongly believe I was breaking under the immense pressure. "I just want this nightmare over with. The stress is killing Clara. Tell my parents I am willing to meet them to resolve this quietly." "Really?" Felix sounded genuinely, profoundly relieved. "That is huge, Julian. You are doing the right thing. Where do you want to meet them? At the bank?" "No," I said, carefully setting the steel trap. "Preston took the ring to Crystal Jewelers this morning to get it resized for Hazel. They called me because my name is on the registry. I told the jeweler to put a hold on it. Tell my parents and Preston to meet me at Crystal Jewelers at exactly 3 p.m. Tell them to bring the checkbook. If Dad pays me exactly what the ring is worth, I will sign the transfer of ownership paperwork right there at the store, and Preston can keep the ring for Hazel." "Oh, thank God," Felix breathed out heavily. "You are being the bigger man, Julian. I will tell them right now. They will definitely be there." I hung up the phone and tossed it onto the counter. I felt physically sick to my stomach, a dark, twisting knot of adrenaline, anger, and profound grief. I had just boldly lied to my family, but it was the absolute only way to get them all in one room, in a highly public setting where they could not scream, manipulate, or gaslight their way out of the glaring truth. The hours between noon and 3 p.m. dragged on like cold, thick molasses. The anticipation was vibrating in my bones. I drove back to my old apartment, which Clara and I were still in the tedious process of cleaning out, specifically to retrieve my heavy fireproof document lockbox. Inside that box were the original, itemized receipts from Crystal Jewelers, the official GIA certificate of authenticity for the diamond, and the highly detailed appraisal document I had required for insurance purposes. Every single document had my full legal name, my signature, and the exact date of purchase clearly and boldly printed on it. I placed the documents meticulously into a sleek, black leather presentation folder. This was not just a family confrontation. It was a highly calculated execution of truth, and I was bringing the executioner's axe securely in my briefcase. At 2:15 p.m., my phone buzzed with an incoming text message. It was from Preston. "Hey bro, Felix said you're coming down to the jewelry store to sign the papers today. I know things got super heated yesterday, but I just want to say thank you. You really saved me. I owe you big time for this. Dad's bringing the check. Love you, man." I stared blankly at the glowing screen, a chilling, nauseating wave of absolute disgust washing over my entire body. Love you, man. The sheer, unadulterated audacity to steal from my locked safe, lie directly to my face, hide cowardly behind our parents' wealth, and then send a casual text acting like I was just doing him a solid brotherly favor. He honestly, truly believed he had won. He believed that, once again, the universe would miraculously bend to accommodate his selfish desires, and I would gladly absorb the massive financial and emotional impact just to keep the peace. I did not reply. I just slid the phone silently into my suit pocket. I had dressed very carefully for this specific occasion. A sharply tailored charcoal suit, a crisp white shirt, no tie. I wanted to look exactly like the successful, responsible, unbothered adult they always punished me for being. I arrived at Crystal Jewelers at exactly 2:45 p.m. The boutique was located in a high-end, heavily secured outdoor shopping promenade, flanked by luxury designer stores and valet parking stands. The heavy glass double doors of the jeweler were guarded by a man in a dark suit who nodded respectfully as I approached. I walked into the cool, perfectly climate-controlled air of the sprawling showroom. The lighting was meticulously designed to make every single diamond in the pristine glass cases explode with blinding fire. Mr. Winston saw me immediately and stepped out from behind the rear mahogany counter. He was an older gentleman, impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit, with sharp, highly intelligent eyes that had clearly seen decades of intense human drama play out over expensive stones. "Mr. Julian," he extended a firm hand, "I am very glad you are here. Thank you for your utmost discretion, Mr. Winston." I shook his hand firmly, appreciating his professionalism. "Is absolutely everything prepared as we discussed?" "It is," he nodded, lowering his voice so the other staff could not hear. "The ring remains highly secure in the back vault. I have the high-definition security footage queued up and ready to play on the tablet in the private viewing room just behind this wall. And, as an extra, necessary precaution, given the immense dollar amount involved and your confirmation of the theft, I took the liberty of contacting a trusted colleague in local law enforcement. Detective Lawson is waiting quietly in the back office. He is technically off duty, acting in a private security capacity for the store today, but he is fully prepared to step out, intervene, and take an official statement should you request it. I felt a massive surge of gratitude toward this man. He did not know me from Adam, but he recognized a victim being exploited, and he was absolutely not going to let his prestigious store be used to facilitate a family crime. "Thank you. That is exactly what I need right now," I said, feeling my posture straighten. "They should be arriving any minute." I told them I was coming here to sign transfer paperwork and accept a check from my father. Mr. Winston raised a silver eyebrow, a hint of a grim smile on his face. "A very clever tactic to ensure their presence. We shall play along completely until you dictate otherwise." I stood near the front display cases, my back perfectly straight, my hands clasped loosely in front of me, watching the glass doors through the reflection of the display case. At exactly 2:58 p.m., a sleek, silver luxury SUV pulled up abruptly to the valet stand outside. My father's car. The doors opened, and out stepped the entire circus. My father emerged first, looking incredibly stressed and exhausted, actively clutching a leather checkbook in his sweaty hand. My mother stepped out next, wearing her signature oversized designer sunglasses and a silk scarf, looking around the high-end promenade with a smug, entitled sense of belonging. And then came Preston, holding hands tightly with Hazel. Hazel looked absolutely radiant, wearing a pretty yellow sundress, entirely oblivious to the horrifying fact that she was walking directly into a slaughterhouse. Preston had a wide, incredibly arrogant grin plastered on his face. He was pointing out the store's signage to Hazel, probably feeding her some fabricated, romantic story about how he had the ring custom ordered here just for her. I watched them walk toward the glass doors. For a fraction of a second, a phantom pang of intense guilt tugged at my chest. This was going to absolutely destroy Hazel. She was innocent collateral damage in my family's toxic, endless war. But I quickly hardened my heart and pushed the guilt away. If I did not stop this right now, Preston would spend the rest of his pathetic life lying to her, dragging her down into his vortex of deceit and financial ruin. The truth was going to hurt her terribly today, but living a lie would eventually destroy her entire life. The security guard pulled open the heavy door, and the four of them walked into the quiet, echoing showroom. My mother spotted me first. She pulled off her oversized sunglasses, forcing a tight, completely unnatural smile onto her face. "Julian, darling," she said, her voice echoing slightly off the polished marble floors. She walked quickly toward me, her arms outstretched for a motherly hug. I took a deliberate, highly visible step backward, keeping my hands firmly at my sides. Her arms fell flat. Her fake smile faltered instantly. "Let's just get this over with," I said, my voice projecting clearly across the quiet room. Preston stepped up right next to my mother, clapping his hands together enthusiastically. "Bro, so good to see you. Seriously, thank you for doing this." Hazel was so worried this morning when the jeweler said there was a hold-up with the sizing. I told her it was just a minor paperwork glitch we had to sort out. He looked at Hazel, who smiled at me warmly and genuinely. "Hi, Julian. Preston told me you were helping him sort out the insurance transfer for the ring. That is so sweet of you to take the time." I stared directly at Hazel, my expression completely unreadable. "Insurance transfer, right?" My father stepped forward, eagerly opening his leather checkbook and pulling out a pen. "Julian, I have the check right here. I went ahead and wrote it for $5,000 over what you told me you paid. For your trouble and inconvenience. Let's just sign whatever this gentleman needs us to sign, and we can all go get an early dinner together to celebrate the engagement." Mr. Winston stepped out from the private viewing room, carrying my dark blue velvet box on a small silver presentation tray. He walked slowly and placed it carefully on the glass counter right between us. Preston's eyes lit up with absolute greed. He immediately reached out his hand to grab the box off the tray. Before his fingers could even brush the soft velvet, my hand shot out like lightning, clamping down hard over the box, pinning it aggressively to the glass counter. "Do not touch it," I said, the venom in my voice finally slipping out, freezing the air in the room. Preston recoiled sharply, looking at my parents in shock for help. "Whoa, Julian, chill out, man. Dad has the check right there in his hand." I slowly lifted my hand off the box, unzipped my black leather folder, and pulled out the thick stack of original documents. I laid them out deliberately on the glass counter, side by side, facing them. The original purchase receipt, the official certificate of authenticity, the detailed insurance appraisal, all bearing my legal name in bold black ink. "There is absolutely no paperwork to transfer," I said, my voice echoing loudly in the sudden, suffocating silence of the jewelry store. "There is no check that can fix this. I did not bring you here to negotiate a sale." My mother's face completely drained of color. "Julian, what on earth are you doing? We had an agreement with Felix." "No, Mom." I looked her dead in the eye, my gaze filled with 30 years of resentment. "You had a delusion. I brought you here to show Hazel exactly who she is marrying. and to show you that your days of bailing this thief out of his crimes are officially permanently over." I turned slightly and nodded to Mr. Winston. Mr. Winston tapped the earpiece in his right ear. "Detective Lawson, if you would please step out. We have a situation here requiring official documentation of grand larceny." The heavy oak door to the back office clicked open loudly, and the storm officially made landfall. The heavy, solid oak door to the back office of Crystal Jewelers clicked open with a sound that seemed to echo like a gunshot in the pristine, quiet showroom. The storm that I had been meticulously brewing had officially made landfall, and there was absolutely no turning back now. Detective Lawson stepped slowly out into the brightly lit showroom. He was a large, incredibly imposing man, dressed in a sharp, dark civilian suit, but he carried himself with the unmistakable, heavy authority of someone who had spent decades dealing with the absolute worst of human nature. He did not say a single word at first. He just stood there, a hardened veteran of law enforcement, his sharp eyes methodically scanning the group in front of him. His hands rested casually near his leather belt, right next to his badge, radiating a silent pressure that instantly sucked all the oxygen out of the room. The entire atmosphere in the high-end jewelry store shifted so violently it felt like the barometric pressure had plummeted before a hurricane. You could literally hear a pin drop on the polished marble floor. Hazel was the very first one to break the suffocating silence. She looked frantically at the imposing detective, then over at the stern face of Mr. Winston, and finally, she looked down at the glossy black leather folder I had spread aggressively across the glass display counter. She slowly reached out, her fingers trembling so badly she could barely grip the paper, and she picked up the official GIA certificate of authenticity. She read my full legal name printed boldly in black ink at the very top. She read the exact date of purchase, which was a full 3 weeks before Preston ever claimed he had gone shopping to find her the perfect ring. She read the detailed description of the 3-carat princess cut diamond, the exact stone that was currently sitting on her left ring finger. She turned slowly to face Preston. The radiant, incredibly happy glow of a newly engaged woman had completely vanished from her face in a matter of seconds, replaced by a hollow, sickening, terrifying realization. "Preston," Hazel said, her voice barely a whisper, yet it echoed loudly in the painfully quiet room. "What is this? Why does this official appraisal paper have Julian's name on it? Why does it say he bought this nearly a month ago?" Preston's face went through a rapid, terrifying series of color changes. First, a deep, flushed red of embarrassment, then stark, absolute white, and finally a sickly, nauseating shade of gray. He opened his mouth, his jaw working up and down, but absolutely no words came out. He looked desperately at my mother for a lifeline, exactly the way a guilty toddler looks for their parent to save them when they get caught red-handed with their hand in the cookie jar. "It is just a massive misunderstanding, Hazel, sweetheart." My mother stepped in immediately, her voice dripping with that fake, overly soothing, weaponized tone she used to manipulate every single situation in our lives. She reached out her manicured hand to aggressively snatch the paper away from Hazel's trembling fingers. "Julian is just being incredibly petty today. We had a private family arrangement regarding the financial payment for this piece of jewelry, and Julian is having a sudden change of heart to cause drama. He is actively trying to humiliate his younger brother in public over a simple financial disagreement. You know how siblings get. A simple financial disagreement?" I repeated, my voice cutting through her disgusting web of lies like a hot, serrated knife. I ignored my mother completely and looked directly into Hazel's tear-filled eyes. "Hazel, listen to me very carefully. I bought that ring for Clara. I saved my salary for a very long time to afford it. Yesterday morning, while I was taking a shower, Preston used a stolen override code to break into my personal, bolted safe inside my bedroom closet. He stole my property. He put it on your finger last night after dinner and lied to your face, telling you he bought it. He is a pathological liar, and he is a felonious thief." "Shut up," Preston finally screamed, his voice cracking hysterically, echoing off the glass cases. He pointed a shaking, accusing finger directly at my chest. You always do this. You always try to ruin absolutely everything for me. You could have just taken the check from Dad. You have a massive corporate salary, Julian. You are closing on expensive commercial real estate this week. You do not even need this ring. I needed it to prove I was worthy. You are so incredibly selfish. Hazel physically recoiled from him as if he had just transformed into a venomous snake. She took 3 large, stumbling steps backward, her eyes wide with absolute, unadulterated horror. She was looking at the man she had happily agreed to marry just 12 hours ago, and she was seeing a complete, terrifying stranger. She was seeing a monster who had built their entire relationship on a foundation of sand and deceit. You stole it, Hazel choked out, thick tears rapidly pooling in her eyes and spilling over her cheeks. You proposed to me with your own brother's stolen property? My God, Preston. I thought you were just bad with your personal finances. I thought you just struggled with credit card debt. I didn't know you were an actual, literal criminal. Hazel, baby, please, you have to listen to me? Preston lunged forward, desperately trying to grab her hands, but she slapped his arms away with incredible force. I did it for us. I wanted you to have the absolute dream proposal. I wanted to give you something beautiful that you deserved. Julian has everything handed to him. It isn't fair that I have nothing. What is not fair? Detective Lawson finally spoke, his deep, gravelly voice commanding total, absolute attention in the room. Is committing grand larceny, a serious felony in this state, and expecting a legitimate retail establishment to blindly facilitate the cover-up of your crime. Sir, I am going to need you to step away from the young lady right now, or I will physically remove you from her personal space. My father had been standing perfectly still this entire time, frozen like a statue, his face buried deeply in his trembling hands. He finally looked up, his eyes heavily bloodshot, his face aged 10 years in 10 minutes. He looked at the imposing detective, then over at me. Julian, I am begging you, please. My father pleaded, his voice breaking. I have the checkbook right here in my pocket. We can hire a top-tier lawyer this afternoon to draft whatever ironclad settlement agreement you want. We can handle this privately within the family. Do not press official charges. A felony conviction will completely ruin his entire life. It will destroy his future career prospects. Please, son. I stared at my father, feeling a profound, heavy sadness mixed perfectly with my boiling rage. His future, Dad? What about my future? What about Clara's peace of mind? You were perfectly willing to let Preston completely destroy my life, violate my trust, and steal my property just to keep him comfortable and keep the peace in your house. You enabled this behavior for 30 years. You built this exact situation. You created this monster. My mother, suddenly realizing that her usual, reliable tactics of emotional manipulation and gaslighting were failing spectacularly in front of law enforcement, completely lost her remaining composure. She turned aggressively toward Mr. Winston, her face twisted in a mask of wealthy entitlement. How much? She demanded, aggressively digging her hands into her expensive designer purse. How much money do you want to permanently delete that security footage and pretend this entire ridiculous incident never happened? I can write you a massive check right now. Name your exact price. 5,000? 10,000? 20? I have a massive inheritance. I can afford it. I will generously pay you for your absolute silence. Mr. Winston looked at her with an expression of such profound, icy disgust it actually made me incredibly proud to have given him my business. Madam, Mr. Winston said icily, adjusting his suit jacket, I highly suggest you close your purse right this second before I ask Detective Lawson to add attempted bribery of a witness to the official police report. My personal integrity and the reputation of this establishment are not for sale at any price, and certainly not to assist in covering up a felony theft against one of my highly valued clients. My mother gasped loudly, clutching her pearl necklace in genuine, unadulterated shock. She was a woman who was entirely used to effortlessly buying her way out of any discomfort or legal trouble, and hitting a solid, immovable wall of morality completely broke her reality. Hazel was hyperventilating now, taking short, sharp breaths. She looked down at the massive, fiery diamond sparkling on her left hand. It suddenly looked like a toxic, heavy, radioactive burden. She grabbed the ring with her right hand, pulling it aggressively over her knuckle, scratching her own skin in the process. "No, Hazel, please don't." Preston dropped heavily to his knees right there on the polished showroom floor. He was openly weeping now, a pathetic, loud, heaving sobbing that echoed terribly through the high-end boutique. "I love you so much. I will buy you a new one, a real one. I promise I will change. Do not ever contact me again as long as you live," Hazel said, her voice shaking with raw, absolute devastation. She practically threw the heavy platinum ring onto the glass display counter. It landed right next to my empty blue velvet box with a sharp, final clink. "You are deeply sick, Preston. Your whole entire family is sick and twisted." She turned abruptly and sprinted toward the front glass doors. The security guard quickly pulled them open, and she ran out into the bright afternoon sun, disappearing rapidly into the crowded parking lot, leaving her entire future behind. Preston collapsed completely onto the floor, curling into a fetal position, burying his face in his hands, wailing loudly like an injured child. My mother immediately dropped to the floor right next to him, wrapping her arms protectively around him, glaring up at me from the ground with absolute, unhinged, venomous hatred. "Are you completely happy now, Julian?" she hissed, her expensive mascara running in dark streaks down her face. "You systematically destroyed his beautiful relationship. You broke his heart into a million pieces. You are a cruel, vicious, vindictive person, and I am ashamed to call you my son." "I did not steal the ring from a locked safe, Mom," I said coldly, reaching out, picking up the loose diamond ring, and placing it gently back into its rightful place inside the blue velvet box. I snapped the lid shut. The sound was like a heavy vault door closing on our relationship. Preston made his own choice to commit a crime. You made your own choice to aid and abet him when you gave him my private safe code. This is exactly what the consequences of those choices look like. Welcome to the real world, where your money cannot save you. I turned my attention respectfully to Detective Lawson. "Detective, I have my stolen property back in my possession. I have the security footage secured safely with Mr. Winston. I am going to leave the premises now. I will be speaking extensively with my corporate lawyer this afternoon to determine if we are moving forward with a civil lawsuit for emotional distress or criminal charges regarding the breaking and entering." My father physically flinched, his shoulders jerking violently at the word lawsuit. He reached down and grabbed my mother forcefully by the upper arm, hauling her aggressively to her feet. "Get up, Margaret," my father snapped, his voice suddenly incredibly hard, completely devoid of its usual passive, accommodating tone. "Get up right now. And Preston, get off the damn floor. You are actively humiliating us in public." It was the very first time in my entire 32 years of existence that I had ever heard my father speak to my mother or Preston with that level of genuine, unfiltered anger and disgust. My father looked at me, his eyes filled with a terrifying, heartbreaking mix of deep shame and utter defeat. "We are leaving now. I am so sorry, Julian. I truly, deeply am. I have failed you." He literally dragged Preston out of the store by the back collar of his shirt, my mother trailing frantically behind them, sobbing loudly and fixing her dress. I stood quietly in the quiet showroom and watched them walk out to their luxury SUV. I watched them drive away into traffic. I had my ring back safely in my pocket, but I felt incredibly, profoundly hollow inside. I had finally won a massive battle, but it was a war I never should have had to fight against my own blood in the first place. I thanked Mr. Winston and Detective Lawson profusely for their incredible professionalism and unwavering support. I packed up my legal documents, walked out to my car, and drove straight back to Harrison's apartment, where Clara was anxiously waiting for me. When I walked through the front door and silently pulled the blue velvet box out of my pocket, she didn't ask to see the diamond. She didn't ask for the details of the fight. She just threw her arms tightly around my neck, held me against her chest, and let me finally, after days of adrenaline, break down and cry. 3 very long, exhausting days later, the immediate, chaotic fallout from the jewelry store began to slowly settle into a new, grim reality. Clara and I officially closed the paperwork on our real estate transaction, finally moving our endless stacks of cardboard boxes into our beautiful new house. We were sitting quietly on the bare hardwood floor of our empty living room, eating cheap takeout pizza, trying to find a moment of peace, when there was a soft, hesitant knock at the front door. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it to find my father standing alone on the front porch. He looked absolutely terrible. He looked like he had aged another 10 years in just 72 hours. The bags under his eyes were dark purple. He was holding a small, generic potted plant as a housewarming gift, looking incredibly awkward and out of place standing on the doorstep of the son he had failed to protect. "Can I come in for a minute?" he asked quietly, his voice raspy. I hesitated, the walls of my boundaries shooting up instantly, but Clara walked up behind me, placed a gentle, reassuring hand on my shoulder, and nodded softly. I stepped aside, leaving the door open. My father walked slowly into the living room, looking around at the unpacked boxes and the freshly painted walls. He adamantly refused to sit down on the folding chairs we had set up. He just stood there in the center of the room, tightly clutching the potted plant to his chest like a shield. "I just wanted to bring this for the new house," he said awkwardly, setting it down carefully on the kitchen counter. "And I wanted to tell you that Preston officially lost his job yesterday morning." Hazel worked in the exact same corporate building, on the floor right below his. She was completely devastated. She told her entire department exactly what happened with the stolen ring. The gossip spread through the company like a raging wildfire, and his upper management decided his lack of ethics made him a massive liability. They fired him with cause. He gets no severance package. I didn't feel any spark of joy or vindication hearing that news. I just felt incredibly tired. "That is his own fault, Dad. He made his bed, and now he has to lie in it. He has to learn that actions have severe consequences." "I know." My father sighed heavily, staring intently at the floorboards. "Your mother is completely losing her mind over it. She is frantically trying to hire expensive employment lawyers to sue the company for wrongful termination. She is completely, utterly blind to the reality of what he actually did. She still thinks he is the victim. But I am not blind anymore, Julian. I see it clearly now. I see what we did to you, what I coward-like let her do to you all these years. Apologies do not change the past, Dad, and they do not erase the trauma," I said firmly, standing my ground. "I need strict boundaries moving forward. I am getting married to Clara. We are building a new life here. We are going to have our own children eventually. I absolutely cannot have Preston's toxic chaos, or Mom's enabling, anywhere near my family." "I understand completely." My father nodded slowly, thick tears welling up in his tired eyes. "I just wanted you to know, face to face, that I am incredibly proud of the man you have become, Julian. Even if I never once acted like it when you were growing up." He turned slowly and walked out of the house. I watched him through the window as he walked heavily to his car, wondering in the back of my mind if this was the last time I would ever have a civil conversation with him. I had absolutely no idea that the real, massive explosion was still waiting for us just a few weeks around the corner, and my father was about to deliver the final, fatal blow to the family empire. 2 weeks passed by in relative silence. The jewelry store incident felt like a dark, fading fever dream. The custom ring was now securely placed on Clara's finger after a highly private, incredibly quiet and emotional proposal right there in our new, empty living room, surrounded by unpacked boxes and the promise of a peaceful future. We were happy. We were intentionally isolated from the madness of my family. But peace is a highly fragile, rare commodity in my bloodline, and it absolutely never lasts for long. I was sitting at my home office desk on a Tuesday afternoon, aggressively reviewing some complex quarterly financial reports for my logistics firm, when my cell phone vibrated violently across the desk. I looked at the caller ID. It was my cousin Felix again. Against my much better judgment, Knowing he was the family gossip, I answered the call. Julian, you need to drop whatever you are doing and look at Preston's social media accounts right now, Felix said, completely skipping any polite greeting, his voice breathless with shock. Like, right this exact second. Felix, I blocked Preston and Mom on absolutely every platform. I do not care what he is doing with his miserable life. He is probably posting sad, pathetic quotes about family betrayal to get sympathy and money from Aunt Beatrice. No, man, you don't understand. He just posted a massive engagement photo, Felix said, dropping the information like a live grenade. I froze, my fingers hovering over my keyboard. What? An engagement photo? He and Hazel broke up in a fiery disaster exactly 2 weeks ago. Who the hell in their right mind is he engaged to? Penelope Arrington. Felix dropped the name, and the silence on the line was deafening. My blood ran completely, icy cold. Penelope Arrington. I knew exactly who that was. She was the 22-year-old, highly sheltered daughter of Mr. Charles Arrington, my father's incredibly wealthy, highly influential commercial real estate business partner. Mr. Arrington owned a massive empire of properties, and my father was a minority partner holding significant shares in several of his largest development firms. Penelope was widely known in our elite social circles as a sweet, incredibly naive girl who had full, unrestricted access to a multimillion-dollar trust fund and a future inheritance that could easily buy a small island nation. You have got to be absolutely kidding me, I muttered, opening my laptop browser, pulling up a secondary, anonymous social media account I used for market research, and quickly searching for Preston's highly public profile. There it was, right at the top of his feed. A glossy, clearly professionally taken photograph of Preston standing on the deck of a private chartered yacht, holding Penelope tightly by the waist. She was wearing a massive, incredibly flashy diamond ring that looked suspiciously like a cheap cubic zirconia cocktail ring pretending to be a priceless heirloom. The caption below the photo read, "Sometimes the universe aggressively removes the wrong, toxic people from your life so you can finally meet your absolute, true soulmate. True love moves incredibly fast when you know it's right. I cannot wait to marry my gorgeous queen and build our empire together. Hashtag blessed, hashtag next chapter, hashtag true love." He met her at the exclusive country club last week. Felix explained rapidly over the phone, filling in the horrifying details. Aunt Beatrice intentionally introduced them. Your mother is currently parading around town, going to every salon and boutique, bragging about it to everyone who will listen. She is telling all her wealthy friends that Preston finally found a woman who is on his level, and they are actively planning a massive, 6-figure destination wedding in the Maldives in just 6 weeks. I felt physically sick to my stomach. The level of depravity was staggering. My mother and Aunt Beatrice were actually actively aiding and abetting a calculated predatory romantic scam. They knew full well that Preston was completely unemployed, publicly disgraced, and entirely broke. They specifically, maliciously targeted Penelope Arrington because of her massive inheritance and her untouched college fund, knowing she was a naive, trusting target who could effortlessly fund Preston's lavish, lazy lifestyle for the rest of his natural life. It was highly predatory, it was disgusting, and it was classic Margaret. Does Mr. Arrington know about Preston's recent history? I asked, my voice tight with anxiety. I don't think he knows anything, Felix said nervously. Uncle Richard has not said a single word to anyone. He has been completely, unusually silent. He hasn't even been going to the office. But the annual Arrington Foundation Charity Gala is this Saturday night. Everyone who is anyone in this city is going to be there. Your mom is planning to use the highly public gala to officially announce the engagement to the entire high society crowd, trapping them, so Mr. Arrington cannot back out or object without looking incredibly bad in front of his investors. Thank you for telling me this, Felix. Seriously, I said, closing the laptop with a sharp snap. I walked immediately into the kitchen and told Clara absolutely everything. We had already received our expensive gold foil invitations to the charity gala weeks ago, long before the catastrophic jewelry store incident ever happened. We had firmly planned to skip it, preferring to stay home and avoid the inevitable family drama. But this new information changed absolutely everything. "We are going to that gala," Clara said firmly, crossing her arms over her chest, her eyes blazing with protective fire. "You absolutely cannot let him do to that poor, innocent girl what he tried to do to Hazel. Someone has to step up and warn her family before he ruins her life." Saturday night arrived quickly. The prestigious Arrington Foundation Charity Gala was being held in the massive, opulent grand ballroom of the most exclusive, five-star hotel in the center of the city. It was a glittering sea of incredibly expensive tailored tuxedos, custom designer gowns, endlessly flowing expensive champagne, and generations of old money. Clara and I arrived slightly late on purpose, deliberately timing our entrance to completely avoid the initial cocktail hour small talk and the fake pleasantries at the door. I wore a sharply tailored black tuxedo. Clara wore an absolutely stunning, floor-length emerald green gown, and we walked into the crowded ballroom with our heads held high, ready for whatever battle awaited us. I spotted the circus almost immediately. My mother, Margaret, was wearing a flashy, incredibly expensive silver sequined gown, holding court near the absolute center of the room, a crystal flute of champagne in her hand. Aunt Beatrice was standing right beside her, nodding vigorously at whatever lie my mother was spinning. And right there in the middle of the circle was Preston, wearing a ridiculous velvet dinner jacket, standing incredibly close, almost possessively, to Penelope Arrington. Penelope looked genuinely happy, smiling brightly and showing off her fake ring to a group of older, wealthy women. My father, Richard, was standing completely off to the far, dark side of the room near the mahogany bar. He looked entirely isolated, holding a heavy glass of neat whiskey, his face etched with deep, profound, inescapable misery. Clara and I made our way smoothly to a small, high-top cocktail table near the edge of the polished dance floor. I took a slow, highly deliberate sip of my sparkling water, looking him up and down with utter contempt. "Hello, Preston. Penelope, you look absolutely lovely tonight." Penelope smiled nervously, picking up on the heavy tension. "Thank you so much, Julian. Preston told me you guys had a little unfortunate falling out recently over some family business. But family is always family, right? I am so incredibly glad you came to support us tonight." "Support you?" I asked, raising a single eyebrow, my voice dangerously calm. My mother stepped forward abruptly, inserting herself into the conversation, her voice dripping with that fake, toxic sweetness. "Yes, Julian. We are celebrating a beautiful union tonight. Preston and Penelope have found true, everlasting love. In fact, Charles is going to generously give Preston the microphone on the main stage in just a few minutes so they can make the official public announcement to the entire foundation and all the investors. Isn't that just wonderful news?" She was openly gloating. She honestly, truly believed that by securing the massive Arrington fortune for her golden boy, she had completely won the family war. She thought the endless flow of money would permanently erase the theft, the lies, the police involvement, and the deep shame. "You are going to publicly announce your engagement," I said flatly, looking directly, piercingly into Preston's eyes. "Exactly 2 weeks after you were literally on your knees, crying and begging Hazel not to leave you on the floor of a jewelry store because you got caught red-handed proposing to her with a stolen ring?" Penelope's happy smile vanished instantly, replaced by sheer confusion. She looked quickly at Preston. "What? Who is Hazel? What stolen ring? Preston, what is he talking about?" Preston's face flushed a violent, angry bright red. "Shut up, Julian. Don't listen to a single word he says, Penelope. He is just insanely jealous of me. He has always been insanely jealous of me because I am the favorite. Jealous of an unemployed, disgraced thief who lives in his childhood bedroom and relies on his mother's allowance?" Clara spoke up, her voice crystal clear, perfectly steady, and loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. "I highly doubt that." The surrounding guests had gone completely, awkwardly silent. People in designer clothes were openly staring, their champagne glasses frozen halfway to their mouths. Mr. Charles Arrington, noticing the growing, hostile commotion around his precious daughter, set his drink down and began walking briskly, aggressively across the ballroom toward our group. "What in the hell is going on over here?" Mr. Arrington demanded, his booming, authoritative voice easily cutting through the thick tension. He looked sharply at me, then glared at Preston. "Penelope, sweetheart, why do you look so upset?" Before I could even open my mouth to explain the horrifying truth, the microphone on the massive main stage at the front of the room screeched loudly with a burst of electronic feedback. Everyone in the entire grand ballroom turned their heads toward the stage. My father, Richard, was standing alone on the main stage. He was gripping the microphone stand. His hands were shaking slightly, betraying his nerves, but his posture was completely, uncharacteristically straight and resolute. He looked out over the massive sea of wealthy, expectant faces, his eyes scanning the crowd before locking directly onto our small, tense group in the center of the room. The ultimate twist was about to be delivered, and I wasn't even the one pulling the trigger. "Good evening, everyone," my father said, his voice echoing loudly and clearly through the state-of-the-art sound system, commanding the absolute attention of every single billionaire, investor, and socialite in the room. "I sincerely apologize for the sudden interruption to the festivities. I know tonight is supposed to be exclusively about charity and giving back to the community. But before any more announcements are falsely made from this stage tonight, I have a moral obligation to clear the air regarding the deeply toxic state of my own family." My mother's face went completely, shockingly white. The color drained from her skin so fast I thought she might faint. She literally dropped her expensive crystal champagne glass. It hit the marble floor and shattered into 100 pieces, the sound cutting through the quiet room. "Richard, what on earth are you doing? Stop it right now. Get off that stage," she hissed venomously, though he couldn't possibly hear her over the massive speakers. For over 30 long, shameful years, my father continued, his voice gaining incredible strength, volume, and absolute, undeniable conviction with every word. "I have stood by quietly like a coward while my wife, Margaret, aggressively enabled, protected, and fully funded the highly destructive, unethical behavior of our youngest son, Preston. I constantly made weak excuses for him. I wrote endless checks from my own hard-earned accounts to cover up his massive mistakes and legal troubles. I willingly sacrificed the emotional well-being and the financial security of my eldest son, Julian, a man who has built a highly successful, honest, reputable life entirely on his own merits, just to keep a fake, toxic peace in my household." The grand ballroom was dead silent. You could literally hear the collective, shocked gasp of the high society crowd. Women were whispering behind their hands. Men were staring in stunned disbelief. Exactly 2 weeks ago, my father gripped the microphone tighter, turning his gaze directly toward Mr. Arrington, who was standing frozen next to his daughter. Preston broke into Julian's locked safe inside our home. He committed a felony. He stole a custom $20,000 engagement ring, and he tried to use that stolen property to propose to another woman. When he was caught red-handed by the jeweler and the police, he showed absolutely zero remorse for his actions. He was rightfully fired from his corporate job in disgrace. He is completely, utterly broke, and he is a proven thief. Penelope gasped loudly, covering her mouth with both of her hands, staring at Preston in absolute, unadulterated horror. Preston was completely frozen, his mouth hanging slightly open, looking at the stage like a deer caught firmly in the blinding headlights of a massive, speeding truck. And now, my father's voice boomed with a righteous, long-overdue anger that shook the chandeliers. "My wife has maliciously orchestrated a calculated campaign to manipulate Penelope Arrington, a wonderful, trusting young woman, into a completely fraudulent engagement. Their sole goal is to secure access to her massive inheritance and her trust fund to cover up Preston's complete lack of a future and his criminal behavior. I will absolutely not allow this to happen on my watch." Mr. Arrington's face turned a dangerous, explosive shade of purple. The veins in his neck were visibly bulging. He turned slowly, menacingly, to look at Preston. "Charles, My father spoke directly into the microphone, addressing his business partner in front of 500 of their peers. I am officially stepping down as your minority partner, effective immediately as of tonight. My corporate lawyers will contact your main office first thing on Monday morning to forcefully sell all of my shares back to the firm at current market value. I am initiating a complete, irrevocable corporate divorce from your real estate empire because I absolutely refuse to allow my family's toxic, predatory dysfunction to infect your legitimate business or ruin your daughter's life. I am deeply, profoundly sorry that it came to this. My father set the microphone down heavily on the wooden podium. It landed with a loud, final thud that echoed ominously through the silent ballroom. He turned his back on the crowd and walked slowly down the steps of the stage, walking straight toward the heavy exit doors without looking back even once. The silence in the grand ballroom lasted for exactly 3 seconds before absolute, unbridled chaos erupted. Mr. Arrington did not yell. He did not cause a physical, violent scene. He was a man of immense, terrifying corporate power, and men of immense power do not need to raise their voices to completely destroy you. He simply reached out, grabbed a sobbing Penelope firmly by the arm, and pulled her safely behind his broad shoulders. Dad, he lied to me about everything. Penelope was crying hysterically now, aggressively pulling the cheap, fake cubic zirconia ring off her finger and throwing it directly at Preston's chest with all her might. It bounced off his expensive velvet jacket and rolled away pathetically under a nearby cocktail table. He said he was a successful tech entrepreneur. He said he was wealthy. Preston lunged forward, desperate, panicking, his hands grasping frantically at the empty air. Mr. Arrington, please wait. Charles, sir. It is a massive misunderstanding. My dad is having a severe mental breakdown. He is crazy. He needs medication. I truly love Penelope. I swear. Mr. Arrington looked at Preston with a gaze so incredibly cold, so devoid of any human empathy, it could have frozen the champagne in the glasses nearby. If you ever come within 50 feet of my daughter again, Preston, I will not bother calling the local police. I will call my ruthless corporate lawyers, and I will personally ensure that you are tied up in endless, draining civil litigation until you are completely homeless and begging on the street. You are a disgusting parasite. Mr. Arrington then turned his furious, burning gaze directly to my mother. And you, Margaret, do not ever attempt to contact my family, my wife, or step foot in this charitable foundation again. Your social standing in this city is officially, permanently terminated. You are a disgrace. He turned sharply and escorted his sobbing daughter out of the ballroom, surrounded by a wall of whispering, judging, horrified guests who parted like the Red Sea to let them through. My mother stood absolutely frozen in the dead center of the room. The wealthy women she had just been drinking expensive champagne and gossiping with were now actively stepping away from her, turning their backs, whispering harshly behind their hands. The ultimate currency in her entire life, her high social status, her custody of the neighborhood gossip, her perceived superiority over everyone else, was gone in a matter of 60 agonizing seconds. She had been publicly, undeniably branded as the manipulative mother of a thief and a con artist. This is all your fault. Preston suddenly spun around, screaming directly in my face, his eyes wild, bloodshot, and completely unhinged. Spit flew from his lips as he pointed at me. You did this. You planned this whole thing with Dad. You ruined my entire life. You ruined my marriage to Penelope. You took my money. I stood my ground, not flinching a single inch, my posture relaxed but completely alert. Clara held my arm firmly, her presence a solid, unbreakable anchor in the middle of the storm. I didn't steal the ring from a bolted safe, Preston, I said calmly, my voice steady, carrying easily over the whispers of the crowd. I didn't lie to Hazel about my finances. I didn't try to scam an innocent girl out of her college fund and inheritance. You built this trap all by yourself, brick by brick. Dad just finally decided to turn on the bright lights so everyone in this room could see exactly what kind of monster you are. Aunt Beatrice, suddenly realizing that the family ship was actively sinking and taking on water fast. Immediately tried to distance herself from the radioactive blast zone. She grabbed her expensive clutch purse, kept her head down, and scurried quickly toward the exit, abandoning my mother in the middle of the room without a single word of comfort or support. My mother finally broke. The meticulously crafted, decades-old facade cracked, shattered, and fell away in jagged pieces. She looked around the massive room, realizing that she was completely, utterly isolated. She had lost her husband's blind, obedient loyalty. She had lost all her wealthy, influential connections. She had lost her dignity and her reputation. She looked at me, dark mascara tears streaming heavily down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. But there was absolutely no apology in her eyes. There was no realization of her own guilt. There was only the terrifying, painful realization of facing her own consequences. "Let's go, Clara," I said quietly, turning my back on my mother and brother for the absolute final time in my life. We walked calmly out of the ballroom, the heavy double doors closing firmly behind us, completely shutting off the pathetic sound of Preston's frantic, wailing sobbing. We walked through the luxurious hotel lobby and stepped out into the cool, crisp, refreshing night air. My father was standing alone by the valet stand, waiting quietly for his car to be brought around. He looked physically exhausted, his shoulders hunched under the weight of the evening, but there was a strange, beautiful new lightness in his eyes. The heavy, suffocating burden of maintaining a toxic, 30-year lie had finally, permanently been lifted off his chest. I walked up to him. I didn't know exactly what to say. There is no Hallmark card or script for thanking your father for publicly destroying your family's reputation to save your sanity. "Are you going to be okay, Dad?" I asked quietly, standing next to him. He looked at me, a sad, genuine, tired smile touching the corners of his mouth. "I just finalized the initial paperwork for the divorce this morning with my lawyer, Julian. The real divorce. From your mother. Selling my massive shares in Arrington's firm is going to cost me an absolute fortune in capital gains taxes and penalties. But it is worth every single penny to completely cut the cancer out of my life." I was genuinely stunned. "You actually filed for divorce?" "I had to do it," he said, the valet finally pulling his SUV up to the curb. "I cannot live in that toxic house anymore. I cannot watch her endlessly coddle a criminal. I am moving into a small condo downtown next week." He opened the car door, then paused, looking back at me with deep sincerity. "I know I have a lifetime of massive failures to make up for, Julian. I know I cannot magically fix what I cowardly allowed them to do to you all these years. But I am going to try my hardest. If you will let me. We will take it one day at a time, Dad," I said, extending my hand toward him. He didn't take my hand. Instead, he pulled me into a firm, incredibly solid, tight embrace. It was the first real, meaningful hug I had received from him since I was a small child. "Good night, Julian. Good night, Clara," he said, getting into his car and driving away into the glowing city lights. I stood on the sidewalk with my future wife, watching the red taillights fade into the distance. The absolute worst villains of my story had orchestrated their own spectacular, highly public downfall. The toxic empire of lies had burned to the absolute ground. And standing there in the ashes, holding Clara's hand, for the very first time in my entire life, I felt completely, undeniably, incredibly free. 6 long, incredibly healing months later, the bright morning sun was streaming beautifully through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of the private bridal suite. It was the absolute best day of my life. It was the day of my wedding. The intense, chaotic madness of the past half-year had successfully settled into a quiet, manageable, peaceful reality. My father's divorce from my mother had been officially finalized, and it was a remarkably messy, incredibly bitter legal battle. She tried aggressively to claim every single penny of his corporate buyout and real estate assets, arguing that she was entitled to half of everything, only to be shut down repeatedly in court by his aggressive, highly skilled divorce lawyers. Preston had completely spiraled out of control after the disaster at the gala. He racked up multiple DUIs in a matter of weeks, eventually forcing my mother to completely drain her remaining, dwindling alimony settlements just to send him to a highly expensive, lockdown rehabilitation facility out of state. They were completely out of my life, blocked on every phone, email, and social media platform. I was standing comfortably in front of the full-length mirror, carefully adjusting the silver cufflinks of my tailored black tuxedo, my loyal groomsman, Harrison leading the pack, laughing loudly and sharing a bottle of incredibly expensive, aged bourbon behind me. Absolutely everything was perfect. The venue was a beautiful, sprawling vineyard estate with rolling green hills. Clara was in the massive bridal suite just down the hall, getting ready with her sisters, drinking champagne and listening to music. There was a soft, highly hesitant knock on the heavy wooden door of the suite. Harrison stopped laughing and walked over to open it. His wide smile immediately vanished, replaced by a hard, incredibly protective glare. He blocked the doorway with his broad shoulders and looked back at me over his shoulder. "Julian, it's for you. Do you want me to handle this?" I turned around, a knot forming briefly in my stomach. Standing out in the hallway, looking significantly smaller, much older, and incredibly fragile, was my mother, Margaret. She was absolutely not wearing a flashy, expensive designer gown today. She was wearing a very simple, muted, inexpensive navy dress. She looked completely, entirely stripped of her former arrogant, wealthy aura. She looked like a tired, broken woman attending a deeply sad funeral, which, in a profound psychological way, I suppose she was. She was attending the funeral of her absolute control over my life. "Can I just come in?" she asked, her voice quiet, entirely lacking any of its usual sharp, commanding authority. "Just for a single moment. Please, Julian." I nodded slowly to Harrison. He and the rest of the groomsmen exchanged protective looks, but they quietly filed out of the room, leaving me completely alone with the woman who had spent my entire life putting me in second place. She stepped cautiously into the room, tightly clutching a small, pristine white envelope in her shaking hands. She looked at me, her eyes immediately welling up with heavy tears. "You look incredibly handsome today, Julian." "Why are you here today, Mom?" I asked, keeping my voice perfectly neutral, maintaining an impenetrable, solid emotional boundary. I had not spoken a single word to her since the night of the charity gala. She swallowed hard, looking down at the white envelope in her hands as if it were incredibly heavy. "I am absolutely not here to cause a scene. I promise you that. I know I am not invited to the ceremony, and I respect your decision. I needed to bring you this in person." She held out the white envelope. I didn't reach out to take it. I just looked at it blankly. "It is a letter from Preston," she explained, her voice cracking with emotion. "He is in his 3rd month of intense rehab. Part of his mandatory 12-step recovery program is making formal, written amends to the people he has deeply harmed in the past. He wrote this specifically for you. He begged me to drop it off today, to show you he is changing." I looked at the envelope, expecting to feel a surge of anger, but I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, no burning curiosity. Just a profound, peaceful, protective emptiness. "Keep it," I said softly, but with absolute finality. My mother looked up, genuinely shocked. "Julian, please. He is trying so hard. He is really trying to get better and beat his demons. He wrote this from the bottom of his heart. Won't you just read it? For me?" "No." I shook my head slowly, looking her in the eyes. "I am genuinely glad he is getting professional help, Mom. I truly, honestly hope he finds a way to become a functioning, healthy adult. But his recovery is absolutely not my responsibility. My forgiveness is not a requirement for his healing process. Reading that letter requires a level of emotional energy and vulnerability that I am no longer willing to spend on him. That chapter of my life is permanently, securely closed." Tears finally spilled completely over her eyelashes, tracing wet lines down her aged cheeks. "I failed you," she whispered, her voice breaking completely into a sob. "I see it now, sitting all alone in that massive, empty apartment, I see exactly what I did to you. I was so terrified of Preston failing that I actively punished you for succeeding. I am so deeply, incredibly sorry, Julian, for absolutely everything. It was the exact apology I had desperately waited 32 years to hear. But standing there, listening to the long overdue words finally leave her lips, I realized with absolute clarity that I didn't need them anymore. I had already done the hard work to heal myself. I accept your apology, Mom, I said, meaning it genuinely, letting go of the remaining bitterness in my heart. I forgive you, but forgiveness does not equal access. You and Preston are toxic to my life and to Clara's life. I wish you both the best, from a very safe, very far distance. But you need to leave right now. I am getting married in 20 minutes, and I am not letting the past ruin my future. She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes with a tissue from her purse. She placed the unopened white envelope on the small wooden table near the door. She looked at me one last time, a look of profound, devastating, endless regret, and then she turned and walked out the door, closing it softly behind her. I didn't look at the envelope again. I walked out of the suite, joined my groomsmen, and headed down the hallway toward the beautiful outdoor ceremony space. My father was waiting for me at the back of the vineyard seating area. He was wearing a sharp, tailored gray suit, a massive, incredibly proud smile lighting up his face. We had spent the last 6 months aggressively rebuilding our relationship from the ground up, grabbing coffee every Sunday morning, talking honestly and painfully about the past without the heavy, suffocating shadow of my mother dictating the false narrative. "You ready for this, son?" my father asked, clapping a heavy, warm, reassuring hand on my shoulder. "More ready than I have ever been in my entire life, Dad." I smiled back, feeling the sun on my face. The music started playing, a beautiful acoustic guitar melody echoing perfectly over the rolling green hills of the vineyard. Clara appeared at the far end of the long aisle, looking absolutely breathtaking in her white dress, the 3-carat princess cut diamonds sparkling brilliantly in the sunlight on her left hand. My father stood right beside me as the ceremony began, a silent, incredibly solid testament to the fact that sometimes the family you are born into can eventually learn to become the family you actually deserve, even if it requires burning the old rotten foundation entirely to the ground first. Let's pause for a moment. Thank you for staying with me this far. You're truly amazing. Please help me by liking the video and commenting the number 1 below so I know you've been here with me until this point. This not only helps more people discover this story, but also lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone. Your support is the greatest motivation for me to keep sharing the rest of this journey. My story is absolute proof that you are never, ever obligated to set yourself on fire just to keep your toxic family members warm. Setting hard, immovable boundaries with the people who share your DNA is not an act of cruelty. It is the ultimate, necessary act of self-preservation. You do not owe anyone your future, your finances, or your mental health simply because you share the same bloodline. Have you ever faced something similar with your own family? Have you ever had to draw a hard, painful line in the sand to protect your own peace and your own future? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next journey.